Welcome to lesson number 4 on bully-proofing your child. This is Scott Conway, PhD, JD with mothersraisingsons.com. Now, talking about bully-proofing your child. Now, what do we do if your child is under attack? If your child is being verbally assaulted? If your child is being physically assaulted, we have a criminal matter. Criminal matters are pretty straightforward. You can decide if you want your child to physically protect themselves, give them martial arts training, some self-defense, give them permission. Because one of the things that, at least is true around here and is true in a lot of places, is if there's a fight, both the aggressor and the defender get suspended from school. And some people find that, incredibly egregious. But I just consider that as one of the costs of self-defense. And so if you understand, as unfair as it might seem, if you're the principal, you may not know who started it. And it's one of these mandatory things to try to minimize fighting. But you can decide if you're going to give your child permission to defend themselves. And if you're going to give them permission to defend themselves, and to be honest, we gave our kids permission to defend themselves. We told them that if you are physically being attacked, or you see someone being physically attacked, that we give you permission to protect yourself and to protect that other person. And yes, we understand you will be suspended for that. And because we understand that, we will accept that as a consequence of you choosing to keep yourself safe. Now, in our case, all of our kids got their junior black belts. 3 of them have or are almost finishing up their adult black belts, and so we might have a very different situation than you have, but that was part of our solution. But how do you deal with all this verbal stuff? I mean, you can't go inside block, upward block against words, against posting, and how do you handle that? Well, one of the techniques that I teach is a detachment technique, because if you can stay emotionally detached from what someone else is doing, just the realization that what they're saying tells you more about them than about you. When they're teasing you, when they're belittling you, they're coming from a really bad place. It doesn't mean it's true, and you can just ignore what they say. Don't take what they say to heart. Now, it doesn't mean you ignore their behavior and don't deal with the behavior, but what you're going to do is ignore the content of what it is they deliver. Now, one of the techniques I teach to do this is called armoring up. Now, in this day and age, when I'm recording this, we have several movies that have been popular. Iron Man's done 1, 2, and 3. We've had Avengers, and so a lot of kids right now have a very strong anchor point for the Iron Man armor, which is perfect because in my armor up technique, the Iron Man armor works beautifully. Or you could use, classic medieval armor, or you could use like a Japanese anime type armor. And all I tell kids to do is just imagine you're wearing armor. Imagine you've got the helmet that protects your head. Imagine you've got, the breastplate that protects your heart. Imagine you've got, the armor down on your arms. Maybe you have a shield, and you're just protected from head to toe. So no matter what someone says, their words just bounce off of that armor. That their words are like them throwing nasty things at you, and you're armored up, and it just hits you, and it bounces right off, doesn't even get inside. And at any time you need to summon this armor, just with a single breath, a single thought, just poof, the armor just shows up, and now you're armored up, and nothing anybody says is going to affect you. Nothing anyone says is going to hurt you. Now you can see it, it's out there. You can decide what you need to do with it. And now sometimes, to be honest, your kids may use this with you, that, your kid will be in trouble and you'll be getting on the kid and they might do the armor up technique with you. So, just fair warning. But the purpose of the armor up technique isn't so they don't hear it. It's not so they completely ignore you. It's to block the pain so they can look at it and decide, what do I need to do with this? What do I need to do with what's being said to me? And so having them know this technique, even when they're dealing with you, can be helpful. And this is how you teach it to them. To imagine the armor. Imagine you wearing armor. It just comes up from inside you. It's energy armor. It's invisible. It surrounds you, kind of depending on the age of the kid. And that anything mean, anything hurtful that comes at you just bounces right off the armor. Even if it's mom or dad. It bounces right off the armor. Then you can see it, and you can look at it, and you can decide what you're going to do with it. So that is a basic detachment technique that is easy to understand. It's easy to teach. There's more techniques and more sophisticated techniques, but that one is a very clean one. It's a very easy one, and that is a way for you to help your child be bully-proofed, to protect themselves against hurtful things. And as life goes on, to be perfectly honest, as adults, sometimes we have stuff to deal with too. I've been at the workplace where a customer shows up and he's yelling and screaming at the manager. The armor up technique really helps the manager be able to stand there and be able to listen to this customer. And the customer was making it deeply personal, accusing the manager of all sorts of things. And the manager resisted self-defense, resisted saying, "No, I'm not doing that. How dare you?" But just was able to quietly listen by using a variation, in his case, of the armor up technique, so that as the words came in, it kind of stopped the emotional pain, and the manager was able to deal with the content of what the customer was saying rather than turning it into a big argument. So there's adult use for the same thing too. There's stuff that's going to happen. We're going to get chewed out by our boss sometimes because we're going to mess up, or sometimes we're going to get chewed out by a customer. Sometimes we're going to get yelled at by an employee. You just never know what's going to happen sometimes. And having this kind of technique so that when someone's coming at us and they are trying to make it personal, they are directing it to us personally, we can use this armor technique or any variation of it to protect ourselves from that pain that might lodge in and cause us to react or overreact, and then maybe say or do some things in return that might not necessarily be in our best interests or might not be in the interests of the relationship. So this is Scott Conner with mothersraisingsons.com, teaching the armoring technique as a detachment technique for bully proofing your child. And then come back because we're not done. There's more.